Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over this 32 step or part tutorial, Bootstrap 4 tutorial that's on Quackit.com. In the first lesson, I went over what is Bootstrap, getting started, Bootstrap containers, and the Bootstrap grid system. In the second lecture, I went over Bootstrap 4 topography, Bootstrap 4 tables, Bootstrap 4 forms, and Bootstrap form custom forms. In this series of lectures, we're going to continue on and look at Bootstrap buttons, Bootstrap images, Bootstrap drop-downs, and Bootstrap button groups. Let's just click on the buttons link. Bootstrap 4 provides 7 styles of buttons. Every time you use a button, you're going to have to start it by saying class equal btn. Alright, that's the built-in button class. But you'll notice after you do that, you can use a primary button, which is a bright blue, a secondary button, which is kind of a typical button that we're used to looking at, and if you mouse over it, it kind of looks like a gray button. Info, which is a muted light blue, success, which is green, warning, which is kind of an orange, and danger, which is more red. You can also create links, and I don't believe you can add colored links. That should be in here someplace. So Bootstrap 4's button elements are designed to be used with a button element, which is one, what that means is that's one that you create, that you're typically going to have some JavaScript for. They can also be applied to input and A elements. You can also apply the button design to a label element when you work with checkboxes and radio buttons, which they'll discuss in a minute. Okay, so you notice all of these are primary. So this looks very similar to the kind of thing that we're used to having. All right, but I do want to show you one thing. I want to grab this. Let's copy it to the clipboard. Previous lecture we were working with forms. We're off of that for now. Alright, so we're back to here. And I want to just show you this. I want to grab every one of these. Okay, and you'll notice the first one is an anchor tag, the second is a button, the last two are inputs, but they all look the same. Okay, but what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, out of the first one, I'm going to grab off and I'm just going to put the default button class, and that's it. So let's see how different it does or does not look. See that? Now, why does it look like that? Well, remember, that was an anchor tag. Okay, as soon as I put this back in there, it looks like a button again. Let's go to the actual button one that we have in here, and let's remove the button primary from there. And refresh. Now that one's back, but notice this has got the look of a typical button now. A non-dressed up, a non-colored button, so to speak. Just the old kind of grayish button, although it is rounded with black text. You can use the Bootstrap 4 outline classes to apply semantic color to the outline of the button only. Okay, so notice these are all white except the outline around the button is a different color, and when you highlight it, it becomes a different color. There is no outline, so the outline can't be used for links. Okay, I guess you can use color, but not the outline. All right, you can specify one of 3 different button sizes. You could have a small button, a default size button, and a large button. Okay. A block level button, if you use that, that spans the width of the parent. So in other words, it's a big, long, wide button. You might want to do that for effect or for whatever reason. Disabled buttons are just what you think. Buttons provide for the disabled state, which means that nothing's going to happen if you click them. See that? How they don't get that when you arrow over them? They don't get that look. Toggle checkboxes and radio buttons. You can apply the Bootstrap 4 button styles to radio buttons and to checkboxes to provide a toggle feature. So you notice whatever one is active, it's got the darker color in it. Okay. All right, let's jump over to images. Images are kind of neat. They're, it says create responsive images. So Bootstrap provides classes that can be used when working with the image element. Most of these are utility classes that can be applied to any element, not just images. However, there is a class specifically for responsive images. That is the image fluid class. Notice this is a biggie. It applies the max width of 100% and a height of auto. So what that means is that the image should automatically scale whenever, a lot of times, for example, if you had an image inside of a div, that as the div gets bigger or smaller, the image will try its best to scale accordingly. So they ask you to look at this example here. So let me grab this. I don't know what the heck happened there, but move it down to where that image was. I don't know where that image was. There it is. So they say what happens when you, okay. So you can see as it gets bigger, the size of the image is being 100% scales accordingly. Okay? All right. You can use Bootstrap to render images with rounded corners or as a circle. So in other words, look at the differences here. The first one just says rounded, so you get the rounded corners. The second one says circle, that's pretty obvious. There's a thumbnail class, which is designed so if you click on it, of course, it will show the image, a bigger copy of the image. And notice this says rounded, which only rounds, we use rounded top, which does indeed only round the top. Again, these utility classes can be applied to any element, not just images. There's border radius classes that you can use when you work with this stuff as well. You can use Bootstrap's helper float classes or text alignment to align images horizontally. Bootstrap has a float left, a float right, a float dash star left, and a float dash star right, as it says. That'll allow the images, so here, that's floated left, that's floated right, etc. And there's plenty of examples of these. There's a centering example. This centers a non-block level. Okay, so there are plenty of examples in here when you start looking your way through here. Drop-downs, as mentioned, add drop-down menus without writing any JavaScript. Okay, so pretty obvious what's happening there. And again, you can work with colors on this. You can put, if you've got categories, you can put the underline under one or more of them. So if we look at the associated code there, the class is equal to drop-down. Okay, the class here is equal to drop-down menu. And again, they do go over and they explain it much better, much more depth and breadth of coverage than I've been doing. My goal again is to just have you begin to get a comfort level with this stuff. The key steps for creating a Bootstrap dropdown. Wrap the dropdown trigger within Bootstrap's dropdown class or something else that uses position relative. Step 1. Step 2. Add Bootstrap's dropdown toggle class and add the data toggle equal dropdown to the trigger element. Step 3, wrap all drop-down items in div. Step 4, each drop-down item that uses an anchor tag or uses an anchor element with a class of drop-down item. More of this ARIA stuff. Okay, I would strongly suggest that you take a read on that. Alright, you can reverse the drop-down menu so it becomes a drop-up menu. Notice the arrow. If we look here, the arrow is pointing downward, showing how it's going to open down. Here, it's pointing upward to show that it's pointing up. And the reason that that can become important is that, if you've got a drop down and it's covering something that's important, you could make it a drop up or vice versa. This, I understand what they're doing. I don't know exactly why you'd use this, but notice, I'm going to click this and notice how the stuff is going to appear over here. Would you ever want that? I don't know. Headings, menu headings, kind of hard to see. Okay, so company information is the heading, and then contact us is a heading. Okay, instead of using that, you might want to use dividers. Most people are used to this. Disabling menu items, again, notice when we look on here, the contact us is disabled. So when I put my mouse here, you can see how I get the reverse imaging here. But notice here, all it does is it changes my mouse to show that that is a disabled option. You can do splits. There's different stuff that you can do in here. We'll look at some of the rest here. Where are we here on button groups? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this will be the last one in this series then. You can group buttons together on a single line with Bootstrap 4's button groups. Okay? And you can add padding and stuff, but basically these are looked at as though they're one component. There's a horizontal button group, there's a vertical button group. Bootstrap enables you to control the size of your buttons within the group. Alright, again with the button group small, the button group large. Okay, and you can see the difference between them. As always, and how many times have you heard me say things like this? Don't go too nuts with this stuff. Remember what your message is. All right? And don't put so many fancy things in your site that it takes away from the message of what the site is about. Toolbars. Yeah, here. You can combine button groups together into a single toolbar if required. All right? So that would be in a single toolbar, I guess. Combining drop-downs with button groups. Again, that should be pretty obvious what's going down there. Split. And that's pretty much it. So in this particular set of videos, we went over buttons, images, drop-downs, and button groups. All right, in the next set, we'll go through input groups, collapse, navs, and nav bars. And one or more of these might start getting to be a little bit longer. So I'll be back with those shortly.